The day they first stepped into my apartment, my mother wrinkled her nose so sharply you'd think she'd smelled decay. My father chuckled, glancing at the creaky hardwood floors like they were beneath him. And my sister? She didn't even bother stepping inside. She stood at the doorway and loudly whispered, "I think even my dog's kennel is bigger. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video." I stood there in silence, hands folded, smiling politely, because what they didn't know, what they could never imagine, is that this cramped, scuffed little space was part of something much, much bigger. Growing up, my parents made it no secret that I was the disappointment. My sister Ashley was the golden one, straight teeth, sorority queen, dated athletes. I was the quiet one who loved books, painted my own jeans, and kept a spreadsheet of every penny I earned babysitting or tutoring after school. When I decided not to go to college and instead learn real estate through internships, they laughed. "You'll never make it without a degree," my dad said with a grin, sipping his beer. "Ashley's getting her MBA while you're folding flyers." What they didn't know was that those flyers I passed out helped a small startup realtor get off the ground, and that same startup gave me a 15% cut of every property I helped close. By 23, I had enough for a down payment. By 26, I owned 3 rental properties, including the building I now lived in, but I never told them. Why? Because they never asked. They didn't care unless it was about Ashley or their own appearances. So when they got evicted from their fancy rental due to rising costs and market conditions, I offered them a unit in my building, Unit 3C. I told them it was a friend's place and I'd talk to the landlord. They never questioned it. Why would they? In their eyes, I was the struggling one, the pitiful daughter who wore thrifted sweaters and had chipped nails. I watched them move in, smug and condescending. My mother joked loudly about how, at least it's better than nothing. My dad said he'd only stay until the market calms down and he could find something decent. Meanwhile, I quietly fixed the leak in their bathroom with my own wrench. I replaced the blinds they broke. I didn't bill them. I didn't need to. Their rent was paid through a fake management company I owned. Every check they mailed, it went straight into my investment portfolio. It wasn't until Ashley visited, flashing her new engagement ring and calling my hallway ghetto, that the humiliation started to pile up. She took selfies in front of my door and captioned it, "Visiting the slums to see charity cases. Tucker family first." That stung, not because it hurt my ego. I'd long given up trying to impress them, but because they had no idea who I really was. They laughed at the apartment, not realizing I paid the property taxes. They mocked my life, not knowing it funded theirs. Still, I stayed silent. Until the night they hosted Ashley's bridal shower in the backyard of the building without even asking me. They strung fairy lights, hired a caterer, and invited 60 guests to a place I owned, without once acknowledging the owner. When I confronted my mom, she waved me off with, "Don't be petty. We finally have something decent thanks to your landlord friend. Be grateful." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I wrote a letter. The next morning, the building's residents received a notice. New management will be conducting surprise walkthroughs for maintenance audits, my parents included. They panicked. My dad stormed downstairs to complain. My mom called the number on the letter, demanding to speak to whoever thinks they can walk into our home. So I picked up. "Hello, this is Mia Dawson, property owner. How can I help you?" Silence. Then my dad's voice, low and stunned. "You?" I smiled. "Yes, Dad, me Dot." And that was just the beginning. The silence on the other end of the phone was so long I thought they might have hung up. You own this building?" my father stammered. I took a slow breath. "I do, have for 3 years now." My mother's shriek came faintly in the background. "That's not possible. You? You can barely afford rent." That's when I laughed. Not cruelly, but the kind of laugh that comes from years of silent endurance finally turning into freedom. You never asked? You assumed. The next hour was chaos. They came pounding on my apartment door, Unit 1A, beneath theirs. They stood in my hallway, demanding explanations, shouting accusations, rattling off every time I'd played poor in front of them. "You manipulated us," my mom snapped, "letting us move in like that, acting like you were doing us a favor." "No," I said. "I was doing you a favor. And I still am. You're living in one of the best-maintained units in the area at a fraction of market rent, courtesy of your loser daughter." My dad's face was red with rage. "So this was revenge?" "No," I said honestly. "Not until now." That night, I emailed formal notices to all tenants, announcing a community meeting about updated property rules and long overdue rent adjustments, effective immediately. My parents received theirs first. When my dad read that their rent was doubling and that maintenance would no longer be personally handled by the landlord, he exploded. "You think you can do this to us?" he bellowed. "You're just another tenant now," I replied. They stormed out, but instead of moving out like they threatened, they stayed, quietly. No more unsolicited parties. No more judgmental glances. They started avoiding me altogether, which suited me fine. Then Ashley called. "Mia, how could you humiliate Mom and Dad like this?" she whined over speakerphone, her voice sugary with fake concern. "You're acting so out of character." "Oh, you mean not being your family's punching bag anymore?" I said. "Yeah, I guess I've changed." "You don't own anything, Mia. Stop acting like some mogul. I Googled you. You're not even on Zillow." That's when I smiled, because Ashley didn't know about my LLC. My properties were owned under Dawson Equity Group, a name that had no trace of me on paper. I built it that way, quiet, invisible, and protected. "You're right," I said. "Let's keep it that way." But I wasn't done yet. A week later, I received an invitation in the mail. Ashley's engagement party, hosted at a rooftop venue downtown, RSVP required. I stared at the embossed letters, amused. The RSVP card said, "Guests of honor only." So I sent it back, blank. Then I made my own plans. The same weekend of her party, I scheduled an open house event at the Dawson, a newly renovated luxury apartment building I'd just acquired. It was my biggest project yet, and my name, this time, was proudly on the lobby wall. I hired a photographer, invited city council members, and placed a glowing neon sign out front. "From the basement to the penthouse, welcome to the Dawson." And I did something else. I sent my parents a card. It had a photo of my apartment building, the one they lived in, alongside a typed note. "Dear Mom and Dad, you once told me I'd never make it without Ashley's charm or your approval. Thank you for the motivation. Your landlord." They never replied. But that Monday, I received notice they'd moved out. No goodbyes, no apology, just silence. And for once, I was okay with that. It had been 3 months since my parents moved out of my building without a word. 3 months of silence that should have felt like victory. But it didn't. Not right away. Because after years of chasing their love, their validation, and their approval, I realized something. They were never going to give it. Not when I graduated, not when I bought a building, and not when I quietly outgrew the tiny, belittled version of me they'd always kept in their heads. They didn't see me as a daughter. They saw me as someone to dismiss, control, or use. And now that I no longer played along, they vanished. That emptiness could have broken me, but it didn't. It pushed me to build, to expand, to rise. I poured myself into my work. I bought 2 more properties. I started mentoring girls from low-income neighborhoods. I partnered with a local women's shelter and offered rent-free rooms in a triplex I owned downtown. One of the tenants was a young single mom, just 20, whose parents had kicked her out when they found out she was pregnant. She cried the first night I handed her a key. "You're the first person who's made me feel like I matter," she whispered. I walked out into the night air after she said it and let the tears come, because I had been that girl. And now, finally, I wasn't just surviving, I was healing. Then one morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered, not expecting much. "Hi," said a thin, uncomfortable voice. "It's your dad?" I didn't say anything. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me," he continued. "But your mom's been sick, real sick. We moved in with Ashley after we left. She kicked us out last week. Of course she did. She said we were making the house look depressing. Your mom collapsed trying to clean the kitchen. I'm at the hospital, and, well, we've got nowhere else. I still didn't speak. I'm not asking you to forgive us, he added, voice cracking. I'm just asking for a roof. There was a long pause. Then I said quietly, there's a women's shelter on 9th and Elms. I donate there. They won't turn you away. But we're your family, he gasped. No, I said softly. Family doesn't sell you short and call it love. Family doesn't mock your success, or laugh at your struggle, or call your home a joke. You made your choice. I hung up. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like release. I never heard from them again. But a year later, I opened my first cafe in the bottom floor of the Dawson. On the wall near the register, I had a photo framed, me, standing on the rooftop of my own building, holding the keys to every door I'd ever been locked out of. Underneath, the words, "They laughed at my tiny apartment. Now I own the skyline." And for once in my life, I didn't care who saw it, because I wasn't small anymore. I had become everything they told me I couldn't be. And that was the loudest silence I'd ever known. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching